Hello, welcome to Dumdrill's podcast. I'm your host Justin. Today we're going to be reviewing The Sword of Shannara, a fantasy book written by Terry Brooks from 1977. First, I should explain some things. For my subscribers, I've been having computer problems, and when it rains, it pours. I'm no longer able to move files from my camera to my computer. I have a problem with the SD card slot, so I'm not going to be able to do on-camera reviews for a while. So I had to go out and buy a microphone, and the microphone they didn't have a lot, they didn't have a lot, so I just got whatever I could afford at the time. So if the quality is crappy, I apologize. Yeah, but onward to the review. So I picked up the Sword of Shinara the other day. It's a Terry Brooks book. It had a TV show made from it, and I think it was like 2010 or 2011. It's called The Chronicles of Shannara. Though that TV show is based off the second book, which is the Elfstones of Shannara. The story for this book, it takes place in a post-apocalypse fantasy world where the different races of men over the years have changed, and some of them look like fantasy creatures. Like in the north, you have the gnomes and trolls, which are basically like the bad guys' henchmen. To the west, you have the elves, which apparently have always existed, even though this world is supposed to be like a post-apocalyptic future world of our world, right? They never explain that. You also have dwarves to the east, right? Who lived underworld who were men who lived underground and came out hundreds of years later, stunted and becoming the dwarves. And to the south, you have normal men, right? And that's where our main characters live. So the story of the book, which this book, one of its many criticisms is that this book is a straight up ripoff of Lord of the Rings, right? Which it came out at a time, it came out in the 70s when people wanted more of Tolkien's stuff, but Tolkien had passed away. So the reason why the book still became popular and praised, even though it was a Lord of the Rings ripoff, is because people wanted more of that. Which the book, by the way, is 726 pages. I was able to finish it in like 9 days, which is a record for me. It usually takes me like 2 weeks to finish a book like this. Yeah, so the book is about, basically, you have this, the book starts off in Shady Vale, and like most human civilizations, they live in isolation, right? Because because the world is a post-apocalypse from like a nuclear Armageddon or something. Men have chosen to live in smaller communities, right, and isolate themselves from other people to avoid conflict, right? Which goes into like that's one of the problems like that other people had for this book, was that the post-apocalypse setting was just to to make it different than Lord of the Rings. But it actually, if you read the book in the first like 30-50 pages, they explain it actually has to do with people's philosophies, and like it drives people's philosophies, and like how they want to continue the human race and stuff like that. So the book starts off in Shady Vale, which, yes, it's kind of similar to Hobbiton, where you have this group of men who live there in like peace and quiet, and are kind of ignorant to the rest of the world and its problems, right? So the two main characters of this book are brothers, though one of them's like adopted. though they said like he's like a distant relative. You have Flick Omsford and Shea Omsford. With Flick Omsford, the book starts off from Flick Omsford's perspective when he runs into like Al-Anon, who is a druid who is like the Gandalf of the book, and Al-Anon had come to Shady Vale to meet Shea Omsford, who's a half elf who's been adopted by the Omsfords, right? Because he's like his mother was a distant relative, right? And Al-Anon had come down to Shady Vale to warn him that, hey, there's going to be creatures coming out, minions of the Warlock Lord, even though they call him sometimes the Dark Lord, are going out to kill him because Shea is a distant relative, is a distant descendant of Sword Shannara, who was the Elven King who defeated the Warlock Lord back when he was a human, right? But before, like, you know, Shea Omsford can defeat the Warlock Lord, he has to go on an epic quest to find the Sword of Shanar, which is the one thing that can kill the Warlock Lord, right? So, like, yeah, the first half of the book is our characters going on a quest, on an adventure to meet up with their friend, who's prince called Menyen Leia, which he's a pretty cool character. He's like a carefree prince, but like he's kind of a layabout, but he likes to go on adventures. He's an excellent tracker, and he's also like the best bowman in the book, even though there are 2 elves in the book as well. So usually the best archer in a fantasy book would be an elf, but here it's a man. So I thought, oh, that's very different from other fantasy books. Yeah, but the first half of the book is basically the Fellowship of the Ring, where our characters go on a quest to look for the Sword of Shannara, which is held in the last fortress. The fortress of the Druids, right? Which have been wiped out and taken by the Warlock Lord, where the Sword of Shannara was housed, right? And the people who join our main characters on their journey, you have Flick and Shea, the Omsfords. You have the 2 elven brothers, Durin and Dale. Dale, who's supposed to be like 20 years old, who's like the youngest of the group. Usually when you have elf characters, they're usually way older than the human characters, but here they're just like they're like close in age to the other characters. So it's like, okay, are elves immortal in this series? In this book they don't tell you, right? But yeah, you have Durin and Dale. You have Handel the dwarf, right, who's friends with Balinor, who is basically the Aragorn and Boromir of this series, right? And you have Menyen Leia, who is the friend of Shea Omsford, who Flick hates because there was a previous adventure where they got lost in the Black Oaks, which is like a evil forest in the Southland, where our characters almost died. So yeah, they go on. The first half I thought was really great. It's non-stop questing action, very D&D. But then you have the second half of the book, where basically our characters get scattered. They don't know where, like, Shea is. There's going to be minor spoilers in the book, and our characters have to go, and after thinking Shea has been killed, who's the only one who can use the Sword of Shannara against the Warlock Lord, who's basically a dark spirit in this black cloak who has like red flaming eyes. Who, when they introduce him, it's creepy as fuck, dude, and it's very menacing. He has servants in his like quarters, the Warlock Lord's quarters, which are who are misshapen like humans who are not allowed to lift their heads from the ground and have to crawl around to do their the Dark Lord's bidding. It's like super creepy and dark, man. Oh, when they introduced the Warlock Lord, I thought it was very even though he's like a ripoff of like, you know, obviously Sauron, I thought he was very well done, right? And yeah, so like what happens is like Shea our other characters think Shea is dead, so except for Alanon the Druid, Menyon Leia, who is the friend of Shea, and Thick, they go on a journey looking for Shea to the north, and our other characters have to go and like warn the Southland kingdoms that there's a massive troll army and gnome army, which gnomes are basically yellow goblins in this book, right? Right, and that's when like they have to warn the troll and gnome army of the Warlock Lord is coming, right? So that's when it becomes like the second half of the book becomes basically Return of the King and the Two Towers, right? And Shea while in the north looking for the Sword of Shannara, goes on a quest for the Sword of Shanar and to defeat the Warlock Lord with these two thieves that he meets, which is Panamon Cree, who his description in the book is really cool. He's basically this rogue who wears like a scarlet leather outfit and has like a pike for a left hand. Right, and his companion is Keltset, who is a rock troll, right? Who you find out later has a vendetta against the Warlock Lord, and that's why like Panamon Cree and Keltset joins with Shea, right? So the book, I would say I really enjoyed the book until the second half, and then the second half the action kind of starts to slow down, right? But the finale of the book is good. You have this like, you know, the last like 200 pages, you have like the battle going, a massive battle going on at like Valinor's kingdom called Calhorn, where he's leading army to protect the Southland at his castle from the invading like Northland army. While they're getting their ass kicked, they're waiting for like the elven army to show up, right? Which is led by like this elven king called Elventine, who is the cousin of Durin and Dale, right? Which one of my complaints of the book is that usually with these kind of stories you have more a lot of characters would die, or like half the party or whatever. Not a lot of our main characters die, even at the end of the book. Most of the characters die are like side characters, and like there's only like, I'm not gonna spoil, but like they did this thing where it reminded me of the retired cop like cliche in cop movies, like in Lethal Weapon, where like a cop is like, oh, I'm like 10 days from retirement, and you know he's gonna die. They do that with one of the characters, where he's like, oh, before the war happened, he was going to go off and marry this beautiful, like, chick. So that usually, that, like, in war dramas, that character would die. They didn't do that here, which I'm like, well, thank God they didn't go the cliche route. Right. But yeah, I really enjoyed the book. There's some really cool, fantastical creatures. I thought the henchmen of the Warlock Lord, the Skull Bearers, were pretty cool in concept, right? Even though they get compared a lot to the Ring Wraiths, to me they're cooler than the Ring Wraiths, right? Because they can fly, and they're like, they can fly, and they're like, they have like a cool design based off of the description of the book, right? My problem with the book, though, like, yeah, it gets slow in the second half, and it kind of copies too much from, like, Lord of the Rings, to the point where there's even, like, oh, fuck. Well, I'm totally having a brain fart moment. But yeah, there's, like, there's even, like, they even copy, like, the, oh, man, who was the, let me just, yeah, sorry. They even copy there's a character in the book that's straight up a ripoff of Golem, right? But one thing I thought was really cool about the book, unlike Lord of the Rings, where they had the item that they needed to destroy the Dark Lord. They got that item right at the beginning of the series, and then to destroy the Dark Lord, they don't even need to, like, confront the Dark Lord directly. They just have to destroy it, right? Which, yes, I know they have to go to, like, they have to go on this epic quest to Mordor, and that's where the seat of power is. Here in this book, first they have to find the sword, right? Which there's a point in the story where not only where the main characters don't know where it is, but even the bad guys don't know where it is, because the sword gets lost, right? So they have to find the weapon to destroy the Warlock Lord, which is the Dark Lord here, and then they have to journey to the seat of power of the Warlock Lord, go into his own castle, and to defeat him, right? And there's a secret to how this sword works that that they kept hidden from the main character, right? Because they weren't. Because if the main character knew, it wouldn't be certain if he would be able to use it if he knew how the power worked, right? Which I'm not going to spoil here, but other people do in their reviews. So watch out for, like, Anime Snob's review. Personally, I love the book, and I was leaning between, like, a 7.5 and a 7. I want to give it an 8 out of 10, but really, the book, as much as I love the book, it has its problems. Like, they skip battle scenes in this book, man, which annoyed me, right? I hate when writers skip battle scenes, man. Battle scenes are like battle scenes are some of the best parts of fantasy books, but like once the end happens, like, you start to realize, oh, this writer doesn't really know how to write battle scenes, like, well, which it is decent, but yeah, it's not as good as, like, compared to other books I've read which had awesome battle scenes, right? Yeah, so that's another problem I had with the book. But yeah, aside from that, I did enjoy the book, and I think if you're a fan of D&D, right, and you love, like, fantasy stories about where characters go on quests, then I think you'll enjoy this book. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Alright guys, that's it for this review. Peace. And for my next book review, I'm going to be reviewing Terry Goodkind's Wizard's First Rule. Alright guys, peace.